The Pit Stop with Jessica Lopez, brought to you by Iracing.com.
Hey guys, I'm Jessica Lopez and this is The Pit Stop. We're going to start things off today by talking about Iracing. They've recently partnered up with Nvidia. They have the Nvidia Cup Series going on right now, and this is featuring the Mazda Miata. And this has 6 mini seasons, each one consisting of 4 weeks. At the end of each of those 4 weeks, there will be one winner who will win prizes ranging from Nvidia video cards to Nvidia 3D glasses and Asus 3D monitors. In addition to that, there will be one prize pack with all 3 of those items, and they will be giving that out twice at the end of season 1 and the end of season 2. If you'd like to be eligible for the random drawing to win that prize pack, you must run 20 official races at any car or in any car at any track. You just have to have the Nvidia logos on your car as your primary sponsors. There's still time to be included to win this prize pack, so get out there and race. These are wonderful prizes and they're worth a lot of money. Great to see such big names as Nvidia joining forces with iRacing and promoting simulated racing. And speaking of simulated racing, a sim that's a favorite among many and runs up there with the likes of Live for Speed and iRacing, Netcar Pro has just released a new version. Netcar Pro is a great sim. A lot of sim racers love this, except it's very light on content. This new version adds 2 cars and 1 track and wet weather conditions. The 2 new cars are the Shelby Daytona and the Osella PA21. And the new track is a hill climb track, and it is the Trento Bondone. To see a list of other features included with this new patch, go ahead and go to their website, which you see right here. And you can download it for about $20 US. We're gonna close the pit stop out today by honoring the best in R Factor of the year 2010. The Mod of the Year Awards has taken place, and they've honored the top 10 cars and the top 10 tracks for 2010. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys the top 3 in each category. Going in first place in the cars category is the FS1 2009 by IMP. Second place goes to the F1 1985 by Valiente. Third place goes to Bathurst Legends 1972 by Os Modders. In the tracks category, we have first place for Salzburg by Com8. Second place going to Akagi Mountain Pass by Project Kato. Third place goes to Autumn Ring 2011 by Matt Cowie. Congratulations to each and every one of those Mod of the Year award winners. Everyone would like to thank you for your contribution and your hard efforts in keeping the sim racing community alive. Next up, a moment a lot of you have been waiting for, our review of the Thrustmaster T500. Finally, it's here. That's gonna wrap up the pit stop, and you have been fueled.
On today's show, the Thrustmaster T500RS reviewed.
Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Jessica Lopez, and this is episode 97. Today we'll be putting the T500RS by Thrustmaster on our Shibami. A moment a lot of you out there have been waiting for and requesting us to do a review on this wheel. It's probably the most anticipated review and wheel of the year so far. Now, this wheel has had such a high demand worldwide that Thrustmaster was unable to meet those needs when it first came out. You probably had a very hard time getting it, and if you do have one, you're very lucky. By the time you watch this, it should be available worldwide. I'm gonna start off by telling you guys how much the wheel is, where you can get it, and some specs about the wheel and the pedals. Released on January 5th, 2011, the Thrustmaster T500RS, otherwise known as Real Simulator, has 1080 degrees of rotation with a very strong belt-driven force feedback mechanism. The wheel itself is made of 100% brushed metal and is 12 inches in diameter. In fact, 2 months were spent searching for the best raw materials to use with this wheel. The red stripe in the middle is made of steel and used to always help the driver know their position. It has 11 buttons plus a directional pad and 2 paddle shifters made of metal. Same goes for the pedals. They're fully adjustable by height, spacing, and inclination. Drivers can position the pedals in F1 or GT style. In addition, drivers also have the option of replacing the pedal faces with a set of aftermarket pedals that can be used on real cars. The Thrustmaster T500RS is available for just under $600 worldwide. Here in the States, you can find it at Amazon.com or at Fry's Electronic Stores. Happy hunting, guys! Now that you guys know all about this wheel, I'm going to turn some laps while Darren and Sean tell you how to get it set up on the PS3 and the PC and how to set up the pedals. When we return, me and Tommy are going to be talking some pros and cons about this wheel. Here I go.
GamePod, the ultimate race rig for those serious about sim racing. Puts you in the driver's seat with all the controls at your fingertips. Be number one on the road, in the race, in the game. GamePod, the choice of champions.
Okay, first up, I'm going to show you guys how to set this thing up on the PC. And the first thing you need to do is go to the Thrustmaster.com website, products, support, and then basically get to the T500 section. Once you got the driver, there's two things you can do. One is do the firmware upgrade. Make sure you do that. This thing's been upgraded at least twice since we've got it. It's pretty much a plug-and-play experience, and from the start menu, go to the Thrustmaster, and there's a firmware updater. And if you see, I have it up on the screen here right now. And it will update. You have to get the firmware from the website. And once you do, you put it into a folder and then you upgrade it. I'm not going to give you exact directions on how to do the firmware update, but make sure you do the firmware. And then also make sure you get the driver. Once you have the driver, do either 64-bit or 32-bit, depending on the type of system that you have. Once you do have the driver, you can make a lot of adjustments inside the driver software or the properties page. So go into control panel, joysticks or game controllers, and then you'll see Thrustmaster T500RS, and then click on properties, and this control panel will come up. Now, first thing you're going to see is test input, and the first adjustment you can make is the wheel rotation. So if you click default, the default I think just goes to 900, but you can go as high as 1080 degrees or as low as 40 degrees. So you have quite a bit of adjustability as far as the rotation goes. Most rotation ever seen on a wheel with that 1080. Next is the axis, which is actually showing you the calibration of the wheel. So you can see, make sure everything's functioning properly there. Over to the right of that is point of view hat. Make sure your D-pad is functioning on the wheel. And then below that we have sliders for the pedals. Now, we're going to show you what happens when you plug in your pedals after you've already got your wheel plugged in, because it's not proper. You definitely have problems. So I'm going to switch off here real quick, plug the pedals in, show you that they don't work properly, and then I'm going to tell you how to do that. Okay, as you can see, I have the pedals here. Man, these things are heavy. And if you're wondering why I'm holding the pedals and not using them, it's because I'm using Club Sport by Fanatic on my PC rig. So these are great pedals, but just using the Club Sports. But I'm going to show you what happens when you plug these in after you've already got the wheel plugged in, because I thought there was a problem with their calibration method, and in reality, it was the fact that we plugged these in after we already had the wheel plugged into the PC. So, I'm going to plug the pedals now into the PC, or into the wheel, sorry. And what ends up happening, gas is working fine, but the brake is only showing about, on full press, is only showing about half calibration. Clutch seems to be working okay. But what I found out was that to get everything calibrated properly, make sure your pedals are plugged into your wheel before you plug it into your PC. Because then once you do that, everything recalibrates itself and then works properly. Because I thought that they weren't functioning properly, and in reality they were just fine. So, I'm going to go ahead and unplug these because I'm not using them, and go on to the next step. Okay, so next up we have buttons. So that just shows you, if your buttons are all functioning properly. If you want to check them, you can go ahead and do that. Next thing down here is check for update. Now what this will do, this will check for an update to the driver, and we're going to go ahead and do that now. And it says there's a new version available, so we're going to go ahead and download it now and install it. Goes ahead and connects to the FTP server, downloads the driver for you, which is pretty cool. And we'll see what happens. This is the first time I've done it automatically, so you guys are going to see it at the same time I do. Okay, so once that's done, it looks like you're all set. Looks like we got a new driver. I'll just close this just to make sure. Okay, so that's how you update. Next thing you can do is you got tabs up here, and you can test forces. So this allows you to test a bunch of different ways, and I'll go ahead and push one and keep my hands back because this thing just goes crazy. Yeah, don't recommend having your hands close to the wheel when you push those buttons. Push one more here. We'll do boing. Wow. Quite a jolt when you push some of these. So there's how you test. The next thing, and this is the important one, you go to gain settings. There's a tab up here. And first thing you come to is master gain settings. And I've got them at 100%. And that's the overall strength of all the forces. And then the next thing you have is the detailed gain settings. And I have it set so I have constant and periodic at 100%. I noticed that if you turn periodic all the way down to 0, that turns off your forces. So now I'm going back to the test tab and none of them work. So I would say keep periodic at 100% and constant at 100%. Next thing you have is spring, and I've got mine at 10% just to give it a little bit of a center spring effect. After that's damper, which affects the weight of the wheel or how heavy it is. I turn that to 0. And the last is auto center settings, and then you can do it by the wheel or by the game. If you do it by the wheel, you click that, give it a bunch of spring. Actually, let's get back to center there. That's going to give you a bunch of center spring. So if you let that loose, that lets it center by the game, which you check there too. So that's about it as far as setting this thing up on the PC. As you can see, if you're a Logitech or a Fanatec owner, very similar as far as the sliders go. And then as far as how the forces go or the gain settings, use trial and error. We had some guys over here that are driving for us in the NASCAR World Series Championship. They wanted no force feedback on, and we turned center spring on. So that's the settings that they use. No, all the periodic and constant down to 0, spring up. Where we don't like that. Personally, I like force feedback even on ovals. So I've got mine all cranked up, and then I'll turn it down in Iracing to I think in Iracing I have it at 3 right now. So that's our settings on that. Next, I'm going to show you how to set it up on the PS3, and there's some new functionality as far as rotation goes. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys how to set this up on the PS3, which is pretty self-explanatory. If you can't figure it out, you probably should own this wheel. But anyway, go into the options, and once there, I'm going to wait for these lovely GT loading menus. Once there, you're going to go to the steering settings and change them from, you can change it to simulation first of all, which is what we recommend. Power assisted steering off. And now supposedly this wasn't functioning earlier on, but now you can adjust the strength from 10 to 1. Supposedly it didn't make a difference. That's just what I read at GT Planet. I'm not sure. I thought I felt a difference earlier. And then you can map your buttons from the Thrustmaster T500 Assign Controls for Racing menu. So go in there. And now from there you can change any one of the functions to do whatever you want. So for example, I've changed the square, this button, to bring up my tuning menu. So I can do that, and then I've changed my my D-pad functionality to adjust the tuning menu, which is the way I like it. I didn't use any of those functions anyway, so it just made sense. So that's pretty much it. And then in-game, they have a new adjustment that you can change the sensitivity from -2 to 7. And let me bring that up for you here. Okay, so once you're in a race, before you go into a race, you can go to driving options, and then now at the very bottom of the menu, you got controller steering sensitivity settings, and it says A smaller value will result in slower movement and smoother steering control, and a larger value will result in quicker and more responsive steering. So you can go from -2 up to 7. Kind of weird values there. Couldn't they just go from 1 to 10? So didn't notice much of a difference in that either with the T500. I thought you were going to be able to adjust the steering sensitivity or ratio, but I guess not. So that's pretty much it. Other settings are just standard GT5 settings. Your mileage may vary.
Well, with the T500 being such an incredible piece of machinery, we haven't focused that much attention on the pedals. And these are incredible pedals, the T500 pedals. And one of the things that makes them incredible is their adjustability. Right now, I have them in the Formula 1 position, as they say, or with your heels here and the pedals coming from the floor up. And as you know, they're also adjustable to the GT style or hanging down from the ceiling like you'd find in most cars you drive. And that is a simple process of exchanging the plate from this position down and reversing the pedals. So now I'm going to show you how to do that. The T500 comes with all the tools you need to do the job, and mainly it's an Allen wrench. And these are very small Allen heads, and I would recommend that you do this delicately because over time they're going to get rounded and not want to go back in. There's a little butterfly nut on the back end. So remove all 4. Boom. Last one. So I'm going to put that right there for a moment. And those are the wing nuts and the nuts that you used on the lower position and the upper position. You can pretty much use either one in either position. And then the plate goes, and what you're looking for is this tab right here and this hole right here are what you're trying to align for in the GT position. And you can just put the screw right through there. Well, if you got it aligned. There you go. And we're going to just do the wing nut underneath. Ooh, that one's tricky. Again, while you're tightening these down, you don't have to over tighten them because all you'll really accomplish is rounding off the Allen head screws and shortening their lifespan. And it's not going anywhere anyway. And we have now adjusted the foot plate, the heel plate. Bam. Now what we're going to want to do is flip over the pedals because they're upside down. And there are 2 Allen heads, which again, it comes with the supplied hardware. So just loosen those up. And there's 2 things we're going to be doing here. We're going to be flipping the adapter plate underneath because that accomplishes a different angle. And I'll give it a better angle for being in the GT position. So this is the plate I'm talking about. You can see it's curved. Flip it around, and that's going to give more angle. And one other thing we're going to want to do is move our gas pedal to the other side. And right now you can see the 4 holes that allow us to move the pedal face up or down or in and out depending on what your preferences are. So we have flipped our adjuster plate, we've inverted the pedal, we've moved the gas to the other side, and now we're going to go ahead and reattach it with the provided hardware and tools. And so as I tighten this down, we now have our pedals inverted, our gas on the right spot, heel plate where it belongs, and everything is ready to go. The nice thing about the GT style is the plate has nice holes right here for mounting to your rig or to the floor. Before the base plate is on, put a screw through there, works out very well. Also, you can see the rubber feet here, which make it nice to press up against the wall when in this position. or when in this position, same thing. And because these are flat, if you're not pressing them all the way against the wall, any type of 2x4 profile, anything of the sort would do nicely. The other thing, in Darren's unboxing and preview, he mentioned the mod, the progressive brake mod, which worked out really nice. And it originally included this spring right here. But in the end, we felt like there was a lot of metal on metal, scratchy feeling that kind of diminished the brake feeling. So we removed that, but left the urethane, and it ended up being a little bit like a Nixon modded G25 pedal. So you've got a good stiff brake spring, and then a little cushioning saying, here's the percentage of heavier braking. So as you can see, they are very heavy duty, they're very solid, they're highly adjustable, they're easy to mount, and that's everything you're going to need to know about the T500 pedals.
I'm here with Tom Hackey, who's been driving with the T500RS quite a lot over the last few weeks and on a variety of different sims. And I wanted to get your opinion and find out what you think of the wheel. So
Sure, no problem.
Tell me about the force feedback.
Extremely strong. This is the strongest wheel I've ever tried, and very smooth as well. It's a belt-driven wheel, so it's very, very smooth. There's no notchiness to it. There's no dead zone in the middle. There's no slop. So there's not even like lateral wiggle on the wheel. It's very, very tight, very well worked.
Very hefty.
Hefty, yes. Very well built. Extremely heavy wheel, but very powerful and very precise.
Now you use the G27 at home, correct?
Yes.
How do you think that the T500RS compares to your G27?
Honestly, my first impression after driving this I drove it for a couple hours, and then I went back to a G27, and it made the G27 feel like a toy. It was that big of a difference for me. It's just much tighter, much more precise, much stronger. You can do things like let go of the wheel if you're in a drift, and it will snap back as fast as a real wheel would. And that's something that has been missing up until now. It's really cool.
Now, G27, you mentioned that it feels like a toy after trying the T500. Which would you prefer out of the two?
It's a hard decision. I would probably end up leaning toward the T500RS, but the wheel itself is a little heavier, and the paddles are static. They aren't attached to the wheel, which I like them to be attached to the wheel so that I always know where they are. I drive a lot of open wheel cars, so that is natural to me. I don't do a lot of hand-over-hand stuff. I would probably lean toward the T500RS. It's powerful and more precise, and those two things, there's no chatter, there's none of that clunking, and it's just that much better, but it's a very, very tough call.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the pedals.
Sure.
In which position did you try them in?
I tried them in F1 mode, which is pivoting from the bottom.
Okay, and what did you think about the pedals?
I like them. I think they're a little bit better than the G27 pedals, and even a little bit better than like a Nixon modded pair of G27 pedals. I still prefer the Club Sport pedals. I like the load cell feeling, but very, very good for potentiometer pedals.
Okay, well, you did mention one con about the paddles being not connected to the wheel. Is there any other cons about the wheel that you can think of?
The weight of the wheel. I'm very much of the mentality that a light wheel is necessary, so you can do little twitchy stuff, especially in a sim like iRacing. You need little tiny adjustments all the time. But other than those two, honestly, it's great.
Now, this wheel comes at a pretty steep price. What do you think about the price? Would you pay that much for this wheel?
The wheel is definitely worth the price. I personally would have trouble justifying it. I'm not a millionaire. But you can tell they put that money to the build quality of the wheel. And you know, is it worth twice a G27?
Yeah, because that's what you have.
Yeah, exactly.
And luckily, we're in a position where we get to try these wheels out without a cost. But you know, the average person paying $500 to $600 for the wheel.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I think if I was going into maybe a Pro Series or a World Championship and there were money on the line, I would probably go for that. But for now, I'm good with the G27.
All right, well, thank you for your feedback.
Sure.
I'm sure everyone out there loves to hear what you have to say. And he has been using the wheel over the last couple of weeks a ton here in the studio. Next up, we're going to pass it to Darren and Sean, who are going to give us their pros and cons about the wheel and actually score it.
Yeah, they're going to put it on the Shibami and tell you what they think.
Yep. So here's Darren and Sean putting the T500RS on the Shibami.
All right, time for the pros, cons, Shibami, all sorts of stuff, huh, Sean?
All sorts of a very, very important wheel. Monumental.
Big. This is probably the biggest review of the year so far.
And the biggest wheel of the year so far.
We haven't. When was our last big? Well, we just did the GT2, but when was the last package? Was it the
G27?
Yeah. So it's been a while. Over a year since we've had a big package release like this. So we're here with the T500RS. And first thing we want to talk about is we had a friend of the show, Ron Black, over
Sure.
a couple weeks back. And some of you may remember the ECCI box opening that we did and first impressions.
And it was Ron's wheel that we just got to play with.
Yeah, and in the unboxing I mentioned I thought it felt like an ECCI, similar in force feedback, and I'm still sticking to that. And so Ron Black, I wanted him to try it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, we got to play with it, but he's very used to the ECCI, and since we feel that's how it felt, who better to get an opinion of?
Yep. So we had him over, he tried it out, loved it, and as a matter of fact, that same day we had a guy over that came from the Forza community, tried it out, had never really tried any type of sim racing, but
Right.
Ron recommended that if you want to get into sim racing, that's the wheel to get.
Just
so.
cut to the chase, save your money, so to speak, and get the best of the best that you can get for the money, was his
So
opinion.
yeah, we're kind of jumping the gun here a little bit as far as, you know, we haven't given you our score yet, but so that's just wanted to give you some impressions of somebody outside the show. You know, when we originally unboxed this, Gran Turismo 5 was the only thing this thing was compatible with.
Right.
Now PC compatible, everything works. Every title we tried this with worked like a charm. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, pretty much the best force feedback I've felt.
It ended up enhancing a few games, in my opinion.
What was the first one I put you in?
GTR Evolution, and this is a game that I like, but maybe not love. I mean, it's not, anyway, I got in it and immediately it felt like a new game to me, and it just, the force feedback came through so well, and again, starting to get ahead of myself, but it did change GTR Evolution.
Yeah, and I think that a lot has to do with the precision, you know, the extra bits of resolution, the 1080 degrees of rotation. Even though in GTR Evo, I was only running, I think we had it down to like 360 to 500 or so.
Yeah.
Just like we told you in the earlier piece, how to set it up. Lots of adjustability on the PC as far as the driver goes.
But like you said, it comes down to that precision, I think, is what made it just transfer to any game so well when you're doing that testing.
Yep. Mounted it to, mainly ran it in the game pod. Mounted it to the hot seat, mounted great. Also mounted to the Obutto. It's a little funky on the Obutto because of the way the tray underneath, there's some bars that go.
Yeah, the little V bars, and it's right where those pads go.
But yeah, but you can mount, hard mount it to anything, so we would have to drill through that Obutto to make it work. But
And a wheel that beefy, you might want to just start there. Figure out where the holes go, drill it, mount it proper.
yeah, it's pretty good. I'm going to be using it, so I'm going to probably hard mount it. I don't want it going anywhere. And then Gran Turismo 5, you know, we talked about that, ran it extensively with that, and it made that a different game.
Oh yeah, and it felt, again, I've said it before, I think on other things, again, I felt like I was cheating a little bit. Like I'm just using these tools that are so far superior to anybody else and what they might have available.
Well, you were running GT Academy,
Right.
and you had that wheel at your disposal, but you didn't want to run it, you know, because you wanted to, maybe because I had it kind of tucked away and I
Yeah.
was running it a lot, but
It wasn't exactly available for the 24/7 that I wanted to dedicate to GT Academy.
yeah, I don't think I would have let you. All right, well, now that we've got over the initial impressions, why don't we give them the Shibami scores?
Let a little cat out of the bag, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, force feedback, 14 out of 15. Wheel and rim, 14.5 out of 15. Pedals, 13 3/4 out of 15. Buttons, 8 1/4 out of 10. Mounting, 8.5 out of 10. Compatibility, 8 out of 10. Paddles, 9.5 out of 10. Cost, 4 1/4 out of 5. Construction, 4 1/4 out of 5. Plug and play, 5 out of 5. Giving it a total of 90 out of 100.
Man, 9 out of 10.
That's a great score.
That's a great score. Deserves it. Man, this thing is, tell you what, this is going to be my new wheel.
This is sort of the leader now.
Yep. Speaking of these scores, we're asked a lot after we do a Shibami, how'd you come up with 4 1/4 or 8 1/4? Well, it's both of our scores combined,
Right.
or averaged, I should say. So in other words, 4 1/4 on cost. I gave it a 4. Sean gave it a 4.5. That's how we came to 4 1/4. And we only go by half points. You know, we'll go 8.5. We're not going to score by quarters. So if anything is, you know, shifted like that, that's why.
Sure.
So now that we've given you the Shibami scores, we're going to go over some pros and cons. Then we're going to go over each category, just briefly tell you some things about how we felt, kind of why we came to those scores, and then leave it to you guys to decide if you want one yourselves. So pros and cons. I'm going to start with the pros. Sean's going to say the cons, and then we're going to go over some other things and finish this up for you guys. So pros: solid, smooth force feedback. We feel like we're more in control of the car, and it has to do with, I'm sure, with the precision, you know, with the extra rotation and the extra bits of resolution. Robust pedal set, probably the best in a packaged set like this. Very adjustable, you know, invertible, and that's pretty much it. You know, we mentioned some other things, but we'll go over those in the next categories.
Yeah. For the cons, I have a little bit longer list, but it's not because it actually has more cons than pros. It's just maybe a little easier to define a few of them. But
And you're going to hear a lot of our pros in the next coming categories.
exactly. So I'm really getting out everything we can possibly think of. The wheel is large. For some people, that might slow them down a little bit. Also, the paddles are going to take some getting used to.
I want to add something to those cons really quick. If you're looking to be, like a Formula One, you know, top-notch sim racer, this might not be the wheel for you for the exact reason Sean just mentioned, and another reason, that's static paddles.
Yep.
You know, you want to be able to shift if you're, you know, at lock in that F1 car, you're not going to be able to do it.
And I think that's maybe the only scenario where it doesn't work for me, because I just find myself getting more and more used to it every time I drive the wheel.
I do
So
too.
for like rally racing or GT racing, it's like ideal.
Yep.
So even though I put that as a con. Also the price. You know, this is a big chunk of money for a lot of people, maybe especially the people getting into sim racing. So that's going to be a little bit of a hurdle, but it's very worth it. So I mean, it's again kind of hard to put as a con. You're getting a lot for your money.
Yep.
The other thing is it comes with a clutch, and as of now, there is no shifter. So there's a lot of wondering going on. Will there be a shifter available? Why do you have a clutch? So for right now, I'm going to leave that on my cons list, even though that's also kind of light. And then the last con is this thing's got some engineering in it that means all the older PS3 titles aren't working with it. And I don't see any reason why those companies are going to go updating it. So we're probably looking at a wheel that will work for all games coming forward, but not backward.
And all PC games, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
And real quick, on the clutch, works fine in the PC. And if you have a TSW or a SST Lightning, you got all that functionality there.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And they say they're coming out with one. All right, so we're going to go over each category that we scored things with, starting with force feedback. Best of any wheel for this price or below. No question in my mind.
I agree.
I mentioned comparable to Frex or ECCI, and I'm going to stick to that. Thrustmaster has the edge in adjustability, though, because you can use the software to adjust rotation and all that stuff where you can't on the Frex and ECCI. Strong, and this is the force feedback again, strong, able to make quick adjustments. So I noticed that the wheel really lightened up when it needed to.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything you wanted to add to force feedback?
You know, the thing for me, and it comes down to that motor. They have this very strong motor. You think it'd be overwhelming, but what it does, it almost makes it more gentle. Like, you don't have to power the motor as much. It doesn't have to work as hard. And again, it makes it very delicate. You can just feel everything that's going on.
Yep.
The other thing for me, and this is true and more so than any wheel I've ever used, I actually let go of the wheel and let it return on the center spring force feedback, whatever's giving that command, and just wait till it comes back, and you just know when to grab it again. And again, it feels like going through a parking lot in a real car.
Yeah, I was mentioning that to you, mentioned that same thing to you. Another thing I want to mention, I ran my first race in iRacing with this wheel.
This is big.
And it was my first, sanctioned race in iRacing with that wheel. Street stock, South Boston. Won the race! That's right, with this wheel. So, I mean, I'm not saying it was because of this wheel. I'm pretty good at that track, but first race out, I won.
I think most people think that regardless of your skill level, to be able to do that your first time on a wheel is pretty pat on the back to the wheel. I mean,
well,
that's
and I was used to running either a G27 or the Fanatic, depending on what car I was running. And hey, first race out, I won, and I've done really good since then too in the other races I've run.
That was awesome, though.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that one. Next up, wheel/rim. I like the rubber grip. Some complain, not having the leather, or wow, $600 wheel and no leather, but I honestly don't care, and I don't really need it. I like the rim diameter and the style, as well as the button placement on it. Actually, button placement's a little far in some areas, if you're trying to reach for it on the fly, but, other than that, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I kind of thought of that on the button end, and I was going to bring it up there, but I agree with you, and maybe in the wheel category, because they are so far inset. You don't have any buttons available at your fingertips. So whether it's push to talk, look left, right, whatever, there's nothing readily available without almost reaching off the wheel.
Yep.
But like you, I love the rubberized grip. I find it's got a real nice density to it. So it's not one of those ones that you find on your palm after an hour of driving. It's good and solid, but it's grippy, so you can really use it. And I don't get sweaty on it. I actually prefer it to leather.
All right, so the pedals. Next to the Club Sports by Fanatec, the best pedals, that come with a package, no doubt about it. Similar to G25s and 27s in feel, but way more adjustability and the ability to invert them.
The other thing about it is there's some substantial amount of weight. So when you put these pedals down, they don't want to move around. They don't feel like toy pedals, and they work really well with backing up against a wall.
Yeah, that bar, I was just going to say that bar in this mode, in either mode, you're able to back it right up against the wall, and they stick.
And it's flush, not curved, so it really does stick.
Yep. Next up, buttons. We kind of talked about them when we were talking about the wheel. Specific to the PS3, I mean, the buttons were made, and the configuration are all PS3. All mappable on the PC. Placed a little far from the rim, like Sean mentioned. Would like a few more on the PC, honestly. I'd like one behind the back of the wheel would be really cool.
That's exactly what it needs.
The PS button for PS3 functionality, as well as a D-pad. Buttons are a little small, but they have a solid click and a little smooth finish to them. And that's about it. Sean?
You pretty much said it all. I mean, they feel like the highest-end PlayStation controller buttons. So, again, that smooth finish, but they're very nice. So, I mean, you pretty much said it all.
It's a button. Mounting. Uses the same Thrustmaster claw-style clamp. Actually, Tommy noticed today that it's stamped F430 on it.
Literally the same claw.
So it is literally the same claw that was used with the F430. And it keeps the wheel firmly planted in place. So
a wheel of this size and power, you gotta hard mount it. It's really easy to do so. We did notice just a little bit of pull up, but most, I think 99 out of 100 people pull down. And
I didn't
no
notice it
movement.
until Tommy actually pulled up on it. Like you said, I tend to probably pull down more on the wheel when I'm driving, so I didn't notice it. All right, so next up, compatibility. I honestly don't understand why it's not backwards compatible on the PS3 with other games. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Every PC game worked fine. They didn't make any updates on all those PC games to support it, so I don't know what is going on the PS3.
This thing's got something funky inside, I guess.
I don't know what the PS3 and all those different games are using for drivers or whatever, but kind of weird. But on the PC, worked awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else compatibility?
No, well, I mean, and it's made for GT5, and it worked great in GT5.
Yeah, no doubt. And, it's the official GT5 wheel, and it worked flawlessly in there. Paddles. I love the paddle shifters. Some of the best paddles I've felt, especially for this price range. For this price range, the most positive clicking paddles, without a doubt.
And that's so important. I
like that they're static. It definitely took some getting used to. In my unboxing video, you can see me kind of get lost, trying to find a shift. And if I'm driving the other wheels and I go back to this wheel, I still gotta get used to it.
Right.
But now that I have, I love them.
Yeah. I wish the paddles were actually mounted to the wheel. Like you said, they're so positive, and if they were mounted that way, they'd probably be my all-time favorite paddles. Couldn't be beaten. As is, they are just really good paddles, but you do need to get used to them. I mean, you got to acknowledge that they're fixed, and it's just hard to get used to. Switching back and forth is tricky.
And they look cool.
They do look cool.
Next up, cost. I personally think it's worth the $600 price tag. I spent $650 10 years ago for a TSW. TSW makes solid, high-quality, long-lasting products. And I spent $650 for a wheel over 10 years ago, like I said. No force feedback. So, $600 for a hardcore sim racer is not that steep a price to pay. I mean, it's steep. Yes, it is. But I think you get what you're paying for.
Yeah. The only thing for me is questioning the longevity. They're still a new wheel. It's hard to know what they'll be like in 3 years. How long will they last? I would give it a 5 out of 5, honestly, if I knew they would last as long as, say, a G27 does. Right now, that's still the unknown, but it's such a great wheel that again, 4.5 was an easy score for me to give it on cost.
Yeah, and I had given it a 4, and I think if it was $500, you know, a little more affordable for the entry-level guy, even though this really isn't an entry-level wheel, would have gotten a 5. And then the other thing is, shifter's going to be coming out, and who knows what the price of that thing's going to be. So to get the full package, it's, you know,
but
pricey.
right now, I know people who are paying over retail for Logitech wheels because they're in short supply. I know people are paying money to retrofit a G27 and bringing the price up to nearly this. You get a Fanatic combo, it's going to get you up into the ballpark of this.
$500.
So, you know, you do get what you pay for.
Yep. Next up, construction. I think it looks like a spaceship, but I like it. Really large. Definitely suggest a rig for this wheel and pedal set, but a desk will work.
Sure, it'll clamp to a desk. It'll just be gigantic on top of it.
I can imagine a wheel stand just going...
just from the weight?
Yeah, so, you know, definitely something that's going to be, you know, got some weight to it so it's not going to drop to the ground.
The other thing about it is everywhere you're in contact with it is metal. So you really get the feeling of it being a very high-end wheel. There's nothing plastic that you're in contact with.
Yeah, and, you know, Sean has had complaints in some of the wheels of feeling some flex this way. None whatsoever. You don't feel any flex in that wheel. Plug and play worked flawlessly on the PC and the PS3. We had to wait for a driver on the PC, but it's come now, and there's been firmware upgrades. Firmware upgrades are really easy to install. I haven't had any problems with those. So definitely plug and playable. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts?
I'm really bummed that this one had your name on it when it got to the door. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's the way it works around here. Whose name had it?
Yep.
It's a great wheel. It's been a pleasure to play with it. I mean, knowing it was coming, you just wanted to know, will it really hold up to all the hype? And it really does. I mean, easily the best boxed wheel I can think of.
Yeah, and it's great to see a wheel at this price point. You know, it's going to make, you know, the Fanatics and the Logitechs really take a look at this price range. And think, hey, are we, you know, should we make one in that range? So it'd be cool to see if there's another, competitor for this, and maybe something even better in this price range coming soon. So, you know, I think this is just great for sim racing all around. You know, something at this range, and yeah, this is my wheel now, and I love it. So that's pretty much going to do it. I hope you enjoyed our review, the T500. Needless to say, we highly recommend it. I'd like to thank Win Keaton for getting us this wheel in advance of everybody. We had the first unboxing or any views of this, so thanks for that, Win.
And got that PC driver so quick from her as well.
Yep. Yeah, we had PC driver before everybody too. So anyway, I'd like to thank her again, and all the guys at Thrustmaster behind the scenes for helping us out and working together. And going to hand it back to Jessica to close the show out.
All right, hope you guys have all been successfully entertained by our review of the T500RS. That's going to wrap things up today. Make sure you visit our website, InsideSimRacing.tv, where we have a Thrustmaster section, and obviously this wheel will be front and center in that section. We also have a Fanatic section, a Logitech section, all kinds of things going on in there. Make sure you register so you can vote on our polls and talk to us in our forums about anything and everything sim racing related. Like to thank Win Keaton over at Thrustmaster for getting us this wheel, and we were actually one of the first in the US to have it, and we got to unbox it, and we've got a lot of hits on that show. So thank you, Win Keaton, for all your help with this wheel. That's going to wrap things up for Darren Ganji, Sean Cole, Tom Hackey. I'm Jessica Lopez. Checker flag is out, and so are we. Promotional consideration provided by Iracing.com, the ultimate place to race online. And GamePod, the choice of champions. Go to gamepod.co.uk.
Oh, you started again?
Yeah.
Sorry.